Welcome back to the IDP Plus podcast. I'm Johnny, and on this episode, I'm going to roll out my updated top 24 defensive back rankings for your upcoming IDP drafts. Let's get right into it. So when I say updated, I mean that I did these rankings back in June, but I have updated them, based on preseason information, depth charts, so and so. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here, and you can get a look. We'll first take a look at the top 12 I have ranked defensive backs, and coming in at number 1 is Brian Branch. Now, I will say these rankings are kind of based on a blended scoring, not exactly tackle heavy, and not only catering to big play scoring, but kind of a blended approach here. So Brian Branch, maybe if it's tackle heavy scoring, 2 points a solo, 1 point assist, you can make a dispute here. But in big play scoring or just general, overall, mixed scoring, I think Brian Branch is a great number 1 defensive back off the board. Still young player. We've seen him get better over the second year. 16 games played with an average of 6.8 tackles, which is not elite. But what is elite is the big play upside he has. As you can see, still only averaging 6.8 tackles a game, but still had 3 double-digit tackle games. So he can be a walking bomb any given time, any given week. And you won't find somebody more elite when it comes to the big play. 8 tackles for loss, a sack, 4 interceptions, and 16 pass defense. So, and also, the quarterback hits. He can get quarterback hits. I know I don't have that on this, stat chart with, not a lot of safeties getting quarterback hits. But again, Brian Branch is that outlier dude. So, completely fine, even in tackle heavy scoring, taking Brian Branch over 1. But in big play scoring, no doubter. Moving on to number 2, Budda Baker, an astounding 164 tackles last year. You can see played a full season, 9.6 tackles per game, which is the highest out of any defensive back on this list. 7 out of 17 games were double-digit tackle games. Again, the highest on this list. So, of course, we know him for his tackle ability, and that's why I have to put him at number 2. Getting older, but still only 29 years old. We expect Budda Baker, obviously, to regress a little bit. We've seen this before out of him. I think 2019, he had 147 tackles. Then back in the 90s, back in the 80s for a couple years. And here he pops up 2024 with 164 tackles. And like I said, it can come and go at any given time. But one reason why a big reason why I can justify Budda Baker staying here is the lack of linebacker help. I mean, even last year, they at least had Kaiser White. Now it looks like it's going to be Mack Wilson in the middle. So, of course, that could change. It could be Cody Simon or Akeem Davis-Gaither, at least at the number 2 spot, and eventually taking over that middle. But until then, at least, Budda Baker, I think, is in a great position for those cheap tackles. And again, 164, nobody's going to say he's going to have more than that. Obviously, the number's going to come down, but I don't think it's by too much. Maybe he can still hit 140 or plus for us. So Budda Baker, this is a volatile position, defensive backs, and probably nobody gives us a better tackle floor than Budda Baker. So fine with him at number 2. Number 3, the name you've been wanting to see and hear, I'm sure, is Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter, very polarizing player. How I approach this, and you can adjust your rankings. And overall, this is just my opinion on these rankings. You know your scoring. What goes into your rankings. So obviously, this is my rankings. Yours may change. And when it comes to Travis Hunter, I don't think he's going to be a top 25 wide receiver right off the bat. Obviously, that's why we're drafting Travis Hunter as the top 3 defensive back, because of the offensive upside. It's not going to be made with the defense. Maybe he could surprise us, but I'm not really expecting much there. But here's my baseline with Travis Hunter. So, like I said, not a top 25 wide receiver right off the bat, but somebody who was in the 30s last year was Josh Downs. And I think this is a very comparable stat line, very achievable for Justin Hunter in his rookie year. So Josh Downs last year in 14 games. So maybe could have been a top 25 receiver with those three other games. But 14 games played, Josh Downs had 72 catches, 803 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I think that's a very comparable, achievable line for Travis Hunter. Maybe you could say there's room for upside and you bump him up in the rankings. But as it stands, that was worth 207 points in PPR leagues, not half PPR, full point per reception. Josh Downs had 207 points last year. Now, when it comes to the defensive side, I say stay modest with it. Travis Hunter, maybe I'll say 30 tackles is my projection. 20 solos, 10 assists. So in tackle heavy scoring, that would be an extra 50 points. So that gets us from 207 to 257. Now, if I look at defensive backs last year, how they finished in this tackle heavy scoring, 2 points a solo, 1 point assist. Budda Baker is obviously number one with 282 points, and Nick Cross is a number two with 260. So that would put Travis Hunter at the third overall defensive back scoring from 2024. And to me, that justifies why he's at number three. I understand, like, you could be sitting there and saying he's going to have 1,000 yards, high expectations. Maybe you think more playing time on the defense will help. But understand, stay modest with your expectations. I've seen him go as the first overall IDP in IDP leagues, and to me, I can't justify that. If Budda Baker had the most tackles last year from safeties, are you going to take him as the first IDP off the board? Probably not. The golden rule is don't take a defensive back early. These guys are always mix and matching. We always find somebody in free agents. So I'm not going to just sit here and say Travis Hunter, don't take him. Absolutely, it's tantalizing upside. And if you're, especially in leagues where you start three or more defensive backs, makes Travis Hunter more of a smash play. If you only start one or two defensive backs, he's not really as important. So bottom line is, you're going to make your own ranking about this. Let me know what you think his projection is for this year and where you would pick him. But for me, I can't take him over the top two guys here, Brian Branch and Budda Baker. If you're not paying as much for those two guys, but you will jump up to maybe the third round in a blended offense and IDP draft to take Travis Hunter. That's just too much of a big swing and big miss potential there for me. So again, I like Travis Hunter. He's in my top three at third overall. I could see the case to be made where he can even do better. But even if he's number one defensive back, where are you willing to take the top defensive back in your draft? Probably not, first overall as far as IDP players. So be humble there. Moving on to number 4, I have Antoine Winfield Jr. 2024 was kind of a throwaway year for him. Here's the stats for it. I mean, he played 9 games, but really didn't play much in that 9th game when he got hurt. So really, I'll call it 8 games. Still had 60 tackles, which is fine. 7.5 tackles per game is still elite for a defensive back. Still had 2 out of the 9 games or 2 out of the 8 with double-digit tackles, and still 2 sacks and a couple passes defense there. We didn't see interceptions. We didn't see forced fumbles last year, but boy, we saw it in 2023, and that's why I can't get that good taste out of my mouth with Antoine Winfield when he's healthy, and that's a big problem. When he is healthy, hasn't really played many full seasons yet. But 2023, don't forget, this guy had 122 tackles, 6 sacks, 3 interceptions, an incredible 6 forced fumbles. So Antoine Winfield absolutely was the top defensive back in any league you could find in 2023. And I still think he has that upside. Let's see if he can stay healthy. Obviously, you have to have concerns about a guy who's had injuries, but don't shy away from it because, it didn't go well last season. So this is a new season. Antoine Winfield Jr., he's deemed healthy to start the year. So again, this could go south and, he could get hurt, but anyone on this list could get hurt. And if you do tap into that upside, Antoine Winfield's going to be worth it right here. Moving into number 5, another one of my favorite safeties. You can see I had him at 13. I moved him all the way down to 5, and that's Tyler Nubin. I'm willing to reach on him. I've done a lot of IDP sleeper leagues, best ball drafts. I've done a couple redraft Yahoo leagues, and I don't see Tyler Nubin being ranked in the top 6, top 8 even. Usually he's about 12 to 15, and I think that's a smash play there. I have him here at 5 because that's the potential I see in him, and I think it does come to fruition this year. So I'm absolutely and I will continue to jump the gun to reach up and get Tyler Nubin. As you can see here, 13 games played, 7.5 tackles per game, which was elite. Now, if you look over to my 10 or more tackle games, I have 3 consecutive out of the 13 games. So again, full-time player from the jump. He had 57 tackles over the first 9 games, which is still solid, 6.3 tackles per game. But those weeks 10, 11, and 12, those 3 consecutive games, he had 12 tackles in all 3 of them. So 36 tackles in just 3 games. And then we look at the last game he played before he was out with an ankle injury, and eventually that was it for him for the season. In that Week 13 game, played 55% of snaps and still had 5 tackles. So actually, you could make a case to say he was on his way to his fourth double-digit tackle game. And actually, if he would have done that, nobody else on this list could say the same. Budda Baker, I think he only had two double-digit games back-to-back. Nick Cross had three, so he tied Tyler Nubin. But if Tyler Nubin doesn't get hurt week 13 and plays the rest of that game, he could have had four in a row. And who knows what the rest of the season would have looked like, because that ankle injury cost him the rest of the year. As of right now, he does seem healthy. I think he's going to come back and excel in the tackle department at least. We see Bobby Okereke. He dropped out of my top 25 linebackers. Looks like maybe he's having issues, with his back injury that he had surgery on last year. So back injuries are tricky. I think there's a good chance here. I said it in my linebacker video. If Bobby Okereke is not playing 100% of the snaps or not a full-time player, I think there's a good chance Tyler Nubin could lead the Giants in combined tackles. So big proponent of Tyler Nubin this year. He's one of probably my favorite, reach up to get because I think he's elite, and he was proving it last year. The first four games were good, but the last 3 or 4 were tremendous. So as the season picked up and he found his footing, he was a defensive back one. So Tyler Nubin, don't let him fall too far. Number 6, Jaquan Brisker. Jaquan Brisker, maybe a concussion or two away from making a tough decision about his career, but he's healthy right now. He's starting out there, 6 tackles in the preseason week 3, so even showed out in the preseason so far. I know preseason, we don't look at everything, but if you're a starter and you get 6 tackles from the safety position, I'm looking, pretty hard into that. So Jaquan Brisker, even though he only played 5 games last year, still averaged 8 tackles a game, which is outstanding. Still had 3 tackles for loss, a sack, an interception, and 2 passes defense, and a forced fumble in those 5 games. So Jaquan Brisker, I know he's got Kevin Byard next to them, and you can see both of them on this list. I don't think I have any other, I don't have any double dips here as far as both safeties in the top 24. So both of these guys are in my top 12. Very bullish on them. Obviously, I prefer Jaquan Brisker here. But so, I'm a big fan of him as far as tackle heavy scoring, big play scoring. He does it all. But just overall, that safe tackle floor he has is what makes me able to, justify him at 6, even with health concerns. Moving on to number 7, Nick Cross. You can see 146 tackles was the second highest out of safeties last year. But Nick Cross I have down at 7. I don't think he's going to repeat there. I had him at 5th overall in my rankings in June, moved him down to 7. Couple reasons why. Number 1 is they signed Cam Bynum. Cam Bynum's got a nice 3-year deal, big money there in Indianapolis. So I do think that Cam Bynum is an upgrade for the Colts, but a downgrade for Nick Cross. Don't forget, even though Cam Bynum wasn't the player he was last year, that in 2023 he was only had 96 tackles last year, but that's still around 100 tackles. 2023 137 tackles. So bottom line, the last 2 years Cam Bynum has had 233 tackles. That's surely going to take some away from Nick Cross. Then you look at the first 2 seasons. Nick Cross, 33 games played in those first 2 years, only 56 tackles, and this wasn't like he was strictly a special teams player. He had 4 starts in those first 2 seasons of his career, and in those 4 starts, only 21 tackles. So maybe I'm wrong, and maybe this is a player who Nick Cross is, but the track record tells me otherwise. Cam Bynum signing tells me otherwise, and also Lou Anarumo is the new defensive coordinator. I think he's going to mix up Nick Cross's positioning a little bit more. And obviously, Cam Bynum is a new factor that throws a wrench in things here. So Nick Cross, not saying, don't draft him. He's still in my top 8, which is elite. But 146 tackles, he's not going to, he's not going to have more than that. And obviously, you're expecting a little bit of regression and hopefully just a little bit. But Nick Cross, nonetheless, you can't always look back in fantasy football. Sometimes you got to look ahead. And looking ahead tells me there's a little bit of negative regression there. Number 8, Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton, obviously elite upside. To see him at number 8, I feel a little bit disrespected to him myself. But just inconsistent last year. Who knows what this year is going to bring with Malachi Starks? Last year, towards the end of the season, Kyle Hamilton faded really, really hard for us, especially in tackle-heavy scoring. Our Darius Washington seemed to be getting more tackles than Kyle Hamilton towards the end of the year. But nonetheless, still, like I said, that huge big play upside. Still 5 out of 17 games played. with 10 or more tackles. Still 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 9 pass defense. Very inconsistent though. He did have 5 games with 10 or more tackles, but 8 out of the 17 games were 4 tackles or fewer. So very volatile here for Kyle Hamilton. This could, taking him at 8 could pan out great if Malachi Starks, plays that very deep role in Kyle Hamilton's up by the box, which we do expect him to be. It's a nice complementary pairing, but at the same time, nothing's guaranteed. So Kyle Hamilton, maybe a better real life player than for fantasy, especially in big tackle, heavy scoring, but still an elite player. So fine here with if you can get him at 8. Still think there's a lot of room for upside. Number 9, Kevin Byard, 9-year vet. 4 years in a row here with 100. 4 out of the last 5 years, 100 or more tackles. 32 tackles in his first 5 weeks with Jaquan Brisker. That was good to average for 6.4 tackles per game. But without Brisker, that's what we remember a majority of the season, those 12 games, 8.2 tackles per game. I don't think that 8.2 is going to stand this year. Still think Kevin Byard is going to have his he's going to make it 5 out of 6 years with 100 or more tackles. But if Jaquan Brisker's out there too, eating, getting 8 tackles a game, I don't see Kevin Byard putting up 8 as well. So, obviously if Jaquan Brisker gets hurt, then I would obviously, bump up Kevin Byard even to where Jaquan Brisker is. But nothing's guaranteed, So right now they're both healthy. Like I said, Jaquan Brisker was shown out in the preseason, looks good. He's always been good when he's out there. So temper expectations a little bit with Jaquan Brisker in there for Byard. Before I go on, I just wanted to mention we are running a promo here at the IDP Plus. So today's show, I want to let you know, today's show is brought to you by Fantasy Draft Channel, one of the most innovative product features at the recent Fantasy Football Expo. A problem every commissioner has is modern drafts have become silent, boring affairs. Everyone sits down staring at their phones, waiting for beeps and boops to tell them it's their turn to pick. Where's the energy? Where's the excitement? Fantasy Draft Channel solves this with AI-powered commentary that transforms your sleeper draft into a live broadcast experience. Think ESPN level commentary, but personalized for your league dynamics. With only 1 week left in draft season, don't let your remaining drafts be forgettable. Fantasy Draft Channel brings back the energy and social experience that made fantasy football fun in the first place. If you're drafting on Sleeper this week or Labor Day weekend, visit fantasydraftchannel.com and use code LAUNCH10 for $10 off your first draft. Your league will thank you for the update. All right, moving on here to number 10, we have Derwin James. Derwin James, still a model of consistency. He played 16 games last year, missed week 4 versus Kansas City. If he plays in week 4, probably would have had 100 tackles, but 16 games got him 93 tackles. If he would have had 100 tackles, it would have been hit 4 years in a row for Derwin James. Nonetheless, 4 out of the last 5 seasons, he's had 100 more tackles with 2 or more sacks. So very solid player here. If you can get him, at this DB10, DB12 range, great value. Like we said, tackles were down last year, 2024, with only 93, but he made up for it in the splash plays and especially in the sacks, a career high 5.5 sacks. That's a fair trade-off. You can trade 8 or 10 tackles for those extra 4 or 5 sacks. 11.5 sacks for Derwin James over his last 3 seasons. So this was not an outlier. Maybe this is a number he can build on, or at least 5 or 6 sacks this year again. Wouldn't expect it. Definitely would expect 2 or 3. Anything you get more than that is a bonus, but would expect Derwin James to eclipse 100 tackles this year. So bottom line, if he can get you 100 tackles and 4 or 5 sacks, he's going to be justifiable here. So Derwin James, aging a little bit, but still a solid player, and I think injuries have passed him up, and he's beyond it now. The last 2 or 3 years, he's come back from injuries and shows no signs of rust. So Derwin James still healthy and still a great bet as DB10 here. Moving on to 11, Jessie Bates, another old vet here. Still not even 30, but it feels like Jessie Bates has been playing for a long time. Tackles were a little bit down last year. I believe he had 120 plus in 2023. Last season, an average of 6 per game. That got him 102 tackles. Still has the big game upside. Still 3 out of those 17 games were double-digit tackles. As you can see, the interceptions, incredible. 4. Forced fumbles, 4. pass defense 10. So Jessie Bates, if you're sitting there in big play scoring, you can bump him up a couple spots. I do think he's definitely top 10 material. But in tackle heavy scoring, maybe bump him down just a little bit. One thing that I can say is it looks like he's going to play the strong safety position this year, which, back in the days of Cincinnati and into last year as well with Atlanta, he was playing more of the free safety role. So that's encouraging for us. Jessie Bates, if he's going to play that strong safety role, maybe he gets more into the box. So Jessie Bates is somebody who I definitely think, don't look at him just for last year, what he did in the tackles. I think there's room to grow, maybe 110 tackles, and hopefully he can keep these big plays, and that'll make him back into that top 8, top 5 range. Number 12 will be Josh Metellus. Josh Metellus got played around with a little bit last year. We saw him have a huge year in 2023, big breakout season, 116 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, interception, and 7 tackles for loss. However, he regressed last year on us to only 103 tackles, no sacks, 2 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, and only 1 forced fumble. But Josh Metellus, why I can still justify him in this ranking, is because they lose Cam Bynum. Like I said, that's 233 tackles over the last 2 years gone. Now they have Harrison Smith running with him at free safety, and Josh Metellus looks to be strong safety, maybe used in nickel packages too. He's a very versatile player. I don't think he's going to play 100% in one alignment. I think they're still going to mix it up with Josh Metellus, but he's definitely going to have more than 87% of the snaps he played last year. 2023, he had 94% of the snaps, so hopefully he can get back to that 94, 95%. And I think the stats continue to ascend too. So Josh Metellus, big upside here. Probably somebody who can comfortably get in the top 12 because of the down year he had last year. Left a bad taste in our mouths, but Josh Metellus, again, with Cam Bynum leaving, I think has huge upside this year. All right, moving into our 13 through 24. Time for tier 2. We're going to start it off with a Steeler, Deshon Elliott. Deshon Elliott, big jump. I had him at 19. He's going up to 13 now. Big part of that was Minkah Fitzpatrick not being there. But last year, Deshon Elliott, when he was on the field, he was a huge tackle getter. You can see 108 tackles, and he missed 2 games. So another big factor for Deshon Elliott is last year they really didn't start him as a full-time player to begin the year. Even in the heat of the season, he was playing 85, 84% of tackles. Next game would be 95. So they kind of messed around with Deshon Elliott. Overall, in 15 games played, he only had 87% of snaps. And this is a guy who definitely is. This is a tackle-heavy kind of DB1. If you're in big play scoring, he's probably not going to make the cut as a DB1. But Deshon Elliott, definitely is elite when it comes to tackles. Again, 108 tackles on only 87% of the snaps and 15 games played. Boy, if that was 90 or more snaps and 17 games played, probably looking at 120 or more tackles. Don't expect, many interceptions, many splash plays, sacks, things like that. He's only had 4 interceptions, 3.5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles in his career, which has been 6 years. So not averaging, an interception, sack, or a forced fumble. A little bit less than is that he's averaging in his career. But still, he was not a full-time player. He's going to probably see the most snaps he's ever seen this year. Don't think Minkah Fitzpatrick was, taking a lot of tackles off him, but I do think overall the safety position got worse there. So Deshon Elliott should be that full-time player. So I love him this year. Can justify the bump up to 13. Moving into 14, Julian Love. Boy, Julian Love was my guy for a couple years. 2022, 2023, back-to-back seasons with 120 or more tackles. Regressed last year down to 109, but still, 100, just a one tackle under 110 is very valuable. Not to mention the big splash plays we got out of him. 12 pass defense, 3 interceptions, 3 tackles for loss. Julian Love, a reason why I have him down in the rankings a lot is because obviously the regression in tackles, it's 6.4 tackles is not the elite number he was putting up just a few years ago. But a big part of it is they draft safety Nick Imamwari, and I don't think Imamwari is going to take Julian Love's spot, but I do think the alignments are going to be different. I still expect Julian Love to be the starting strong safety, still get his snaps. But I do think that, last year was kind of speaks the truth about the situation. I'm not expecting those 120 or more tackle seasons from Julian Love at this point. If it happens, I get a nice surprise. You get a nice value here at 14. But again, that was last season. He had 109 tackles without Eamon Warrior. I do think Eamon Warrior gets a little bit eased in, kind of that Kyle Hamilton treatment his rookie year. But still, when it happens, when it clicks, I think Eamon Warrior is a walking bomb there, and that doesn't bode well for Julian Love. But still think, as it stands right now, still, these DB2s, a big emphasis is, are they going to get their snaps? And Julian Love is definitely going to get his snaps. So, still a bankable DB2 with DB1 upside, quite frankly. Moving on to number 15, Grant Delpit, model of consistency. He had a career high 111 tackles last season, and that was with 16 games played. Missed a game and still set his career high. Don't expect many splash plays with Grant Delpit. Was on pace for 118 tackles had he played that last game. So, again, not much else. You can see 7 tackles for loss, which is still solid. A sack, that's probably what he'll get, 0 or 1 sacks. No interceptions, no forced fumbles, 1 pass defense. But he's a box safety. He's up there at the line getting those tackles. They only have Schlesinger there. I expect Schlesinger to get a boatload of tackles, but nothing really else. So Grant Delpit, he should be up in the box getting those tackles, and Ronnie Hickman should be the deep guy there for Cleveland. So love Grant Delpit still. Moving on to 16, Jeremy Chinn. Jeremy Chinn, tremendous year last year in Dan Quinn's defense. Tied his career high with tackles with 117. Also tied his career high in sacks with 2. But I tell you what, not sure it gets better without Dan Quinn. I think that was the right time, right place. Now he goes to Vegas. I think best case scenario, he repeats these numbers, but I don't think there's a world where they get any better. I mean, 5 out of 17 games were double-digit tackle games. 2 sacks was elite. The tackles for loss was there too. Jeremy Chinn, not sure he's going to be used the same way. Still think he's a great DB2, to draft, especially in tackle-heavy scoring. But I like I said, I just don't think things get better for him here. I think it was better for him to stay, as far as fantasy football IDP, to stay in Washington. That is not the case. But Jeremy Chinn, still a bankable DB2, still their best defensive back. He's going to play all the snaps he did, maybe even more. So Jeremy Chinn, again, like him here, respectable, safe tackle floor kind of guy. Don't expect, huge splash plays. Moving on to 17 is Jordan Battle. Jordan Battle is a couple years in at this point, but we're finally hopefully going to see him take that starting safety spot, strong safety spot in Cincinnati. He only had 58 tackles last year, but only had 41% of snaps. So let's just double that. Let's just say 41 goes to 82% of the snaps. He would have had 116 tackles. Now, that's a little bit of flawed logic. It doesn't always work that way, but it's a good reference point nonetheless. Bottom line is Jordan Battle, huge tackle upside. Not really expecting much else, but if you can give me tackle upside from the defensive back position, you're going to be at least a DB2. So I do think there's a world where Jordan Battle can move into the DB1 tier. I like him a lot there, but I want to see some consistency first. I already moved him from 24 to 8. I'm sorry, from 18 to 17. So I moved him up just one spot. But hey, weeks 1, weeks 2, he comes out with 7-8 tackles. He could definitely be a DB1. So Jordan Battle is one of my favorite young defensive backs to take a chance on. And I know I said he doesn't have huge big play upside, but rookie year, 7 starts, he did have 2 sacks. None last year in 2024, but did have 2 sacks in 2023 as a rookie. So maybe there's more upside than we're thinking here. Jordan Battle, I think, is a fine, solid, rock-solid defensive back to have. Number 18 is Xavier McKinney. Xavier McKinney, stock's kind of down on him. Only 88 tackles last year. That's a ugly mark for him. He played all 17 games. Did make up for it with the interception. So if you're out there in big play scoring, obviously gets a bump up. 11 pass defense, a sack, 2 tackles for loss. The splash plays were there. But as you can see, a big donut when it comes to double-digit tackle games. That was his bugaboo, the tackles. Just what wasn't working for him. He was hanging back in coverage. Obviously it paid off with the interceptions. I'm not expecting 8 interceptions again, but I mean, he's had 4 with New York in his big year in 2023. So maybe 5, 6 interceptions for Xavier McKinney. Do think there's a good chance he rebounds for 100, not much more than 100, but 100 tackles. Again, 2023 with the Giants, 116 tackles, half a sack, and 3 interceptions. So it was all working then. It all clicked. This year, he traded his tackles for interceptions. To be honest, I expect somewhere in the middle. Like I said, 100 even tackles with 5 or 6 interceptions. I think that's who you draft Xavier McKinney as. So, great overall player, great safety for the Packers. I think there's a little bit more tackles, to be had this year, but I'm not really justifying Xavier McKinney as a DB1 anymore at this point. So, moving on to number 19, Brandon Jones. Brandon Jones I had at 15. I actually slid him down to 19. So he's on the descent for me. And the reason is, number one, Brandon Jones, he was a beautiful surprise for us last year. We saw it in small dosages that he could be a elite tackle getter with Miami, but it was a beautiful surprise. Like I said, he could repeat the season. 115 tackles it's not Budda Baker, Nick Cross, where he has to get 140 or more. It's not astounding expectations. But keep in mind, Brandon Jones last year did this when Alex Singleton, the best linebacker, best tackle getter for Denver, was on IR. Dre Greenlaw is there. He was not there last year. They signed Talanoa Hufanga, which is a big upgrade at the safety position next to him. Now they draft Jahdae Barron. So that's somebody who's going to play the nickel spot and garner a lot of tackles, I expect. So Brandon Jones, I think if you had him last year, the stars aligned, count your blessings. And I don't think you go back to the well this year, at least not looking for DB1 numbers. But I still think, he's a great tackle guy, especially in tackle heavy scoring. I think he'll be solid and still in my top 20 rankings. So definitely needs to be drafted in those shallower defensive back leagues. At number 20, I have Trayvon Merriweather. Before the season, I had him at 34, and I moved him up to 20 just because it looks like he is going to start there. He did get starter money, but I'm honestly not too excited about Trayvon Merriweather. I honestly wish that they would have, they'd be starting week 1 with Damani Richardson and Lathan Ransom. I think that's a better, rebuild starting lineup for them. But Trayvon Merriweather, I get it. You got to have consistency somewhere. Not somebody who is an elite, tackle performer. Not somebody who's elite even in the splash plays, but did have a nice season last year with the Raiders. Keep in mind, the reason why I kind of do see upside in this is Xavier Woods last season, 119 tackles for Carolina. So there is room to eclipse that 104 tackles. Wasn't really Trayvon Merriweather's calling card, the tackles in Vegas. I think that was his first or second year with 100 or more tackles with Vegas last year. He ended up with 104. But still, I like I said, it could go two ways. Maybe there's a world where Trayvon Merriweather doesn't work out and they want to play the young guys and put Lathan Ransom there at the strong safety position and Damani Richardson at free safety. But overall, he's just a guy, to me. Maybe you get 100 tackles and a couple splash plays. But bottom line is, we're getting bleak here. Like I said, this isn't such a deep, position. So at this point, we got to take guaranteed snaps, and that is one thing that Trayvon Merriweather, at least week 1, is going to give you. So bankable there as far as the snap percentage. Opportunity is obviously important. Moving on to number 21, I got an upside play here. Did not have him ranked in my top 24 in June, but I do now, and that's TyKee Smith. 24 years old. You can see the stats last year as far as tackles. It wasn't pretty. 13 games played, 4.2 tackles per game. Overall, 54 tackles in 13 games is not impressive. But when you look at the splash plays, 4 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles, 7 pass defense, starts to make sense, right? As it stands right now, they're going to move Antoine Winfield to strong safety. TyKee Smith will be the starting free safety. Don't think that he's going to go up and post 120 or more tackles, but I do think the splash plays is kind of what we're here for. I think he's a better big play scoring guy than tackle heavy, but I still think blended scoring. I think he's a fine play. TyKee Smith did have a couple games where he started at the safety position where he excelled in the tackles department. Week 5, he started the game, had 11 tackles. Week 8, started the game, 9 tackles. But bottom line, he's a playmaker. That's what he gets his money for. 2 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles on only 71% of snaps. So TyKee Smith, they did a lot of moving him around, played him at safety, played him at nickel. I'm looking forward to him just playing the free safety position next to Antoine Winfield. And again, rare pairing who both make the top 24 of my list. So TyKee Smith, very excited about him. Think the snaps will be there. So I'm not worried about somebody else taking his spot. Definitely going to get close to 100% of snaps, full-time player. with big upside, especially in the big play, format. So love TyKee Smith this year. Moving on to old reliable, Will Harris. And what I mean by old reliable is 80 or more tackles. He's never hit 100 or more tackles. But one thing he's leaving the Saints and he's going to Washington, which I think bodes well for Will Harris. Still only 29 years old. He's not like he's an old head at this point. So still has some juice left in the tank. Last year, 74 tackles. Probably wasn't on many rosters, right? But that was with the Saints. This year, he goes to the Washington Commanders. They lose Jeremy Chin. Maybe we can say he's like a poor man's Jeremy Chin, right? Will Harris, not a good taste in our mouth overall with his 6 seasons. Like I said, never posted 100 or more tackles. But he kind of was on a heater. When you go and look at his last games last year, he got injured in the middle of the season, and then the last 8 games, he missed 2 games, and then when he came back for the last 8, in those 8 games, he accumulated 58 tackles, which is a nice average of 7.25. So pretty elite there, as far as the tackles. I do think going to Washington's only going to be an upgrade. So if he can give us 7.25 tackles a game this year for Washington, he's definitely going to justify number 22 here. Number 23, this is a big upside play. Could be very risky, but could be very rewarding, and that's Cole Bishop. We don't know if he's going to be, as of right now, he's the team's saying he's healthy. We don't know, his snap percentage. That's a risk. They have Damar Hamlin there. They have Taylor Rapp. Taylor Rapp's a little bit injured himself, so I do expect Cole Bishop to be a full-time player starting week 1. And it's nothing's guaranteed. Maybe it's not, so that's why he's lower in the rankings. If there was a news report came out that said Cole Bishop's going to play 100% of snaps, he'd probably be, inside the top 20 for me. But as it stands right now, it's still a little bit of an unknown. He still had some injuries himself in the preseason, so hasn't really got a chance to take ownership of that backfield. But nonetheless, I still think he has the highest upside out of Rapp, Hamlin, and Bishop. And I do think Cole Bishop, if I'm the coach, he's starting. So not somebody who you're going to roll out in week 1 and be so confident in. But definitely the upside, you can't dodge it. He had efficient tackle numbers on just 34% of snaps, 40 tackles last year. So 34% sounds like 1/3 to me. So let's just triple that 40 tackles. That'll give you 120. So Cole Bishop, if he's playing close to 100% of snaps, I don't see a world where he's under 100 tackles. And that makes him a solid DB2 with high upside. So maybe in a year or two, we're talking about him as a DB1. But for right now, big upside play, just not really bankable at this point. Finally, 24, had to mention him, Cam Bynum. Gets a 4-year, $60 million deal. I'll say it for the 3rd time. Last 2 years, I know last year was a regression year, but still 233 tackles over those last 2 years. Defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo goes to the Colts, and I think that's kind of a blessing here for Cam Bynum. He was a fine DB2 last year, but with Anarumo, what he's been able to do with Jessie Bates and his time at Cincinnati, I think turns him out to another level. So Cam Bynum, I obviously don't have him ranked over Nick Cross here, but I think that Cam Bynum's going to be a little bit better than he was last year, and that's going to be at the cost of Nick Scott. So Cam Bynum, don't just live with a bad taste in our mouth. Still, 3 interceptions, 10 pass defense, and 96 tackles. So, I understand that the big plays, the big tackle games weren't really there. Only one that was double digit, but Cam Bynum, maybe if he can put somewhere between last year and 2023 together, I think that makes him a fine DB2 floor with, maybe even DB1 upside. So that's my top 24 rankings. Maybe you're sitting there thinking you're in a deeper league. I need some deeper guys. There's 14 teams, and we're all going to draft 3 defensive backs. Of course, bankability is key. I think all of these guys, for the most part, maybe not a couple towards the end, but most of these guys are bankable, and that was a big attribution to my rankings. But if you want to look a little bit further and look for some guys past this top 24, we'll start it off with guys who are likeliest for snaps. Xavier Woods. I don't think Xavier Woods is too far outside this top 24. Should be a full-time player in week 1 at least. Maybe Kevin Winston Jr., the rookie, eventually takes his job. But if you're looking for a plug week 1, maybe Xavier Woods is your guy. 119 tackles for Carolina last year. Don't think he's going to repeat that, but still, he's no stranger to 100 or more tackles in his career. Quentin Lake should be his full-time slot corner there for the Rams. Cam Curl, guy who, kind of an honorable mention himself. Maybe he returns to form, but I'm not really banking on it. Another guy, Cam Kitchens, they have is going to play the free safety role, which leaves Quentin Lake with the slot corner role. Maybe he excels there. He could be a DB3 as it stands right now. If you're in 3 defensive back leagues, you probably need to draft Quentin Lake. 111 tackles with 4 double-digit tackle games last year. Who knows? Maybe Cam Curl doesn't work out. They move on, and maybe they put Quentin Lake back in that safety position. But still, as a slot corner, I don't think he's as productive, but I think he's rosterable as a DB3. Reed Blankenship. Reed Blankenship only had 78 tackles in 2024 in 15 games. Left a bad taste in our mouth. 2023, we were high on him, right? 113 tackles in 15 games. I think he's likely to rebound at least to 100 tackles there for Philadelphia. So I'm not breaking the bank for Reed Blankenship. I'm not drafting him inside the top 24. But right outside of it, when you know you're going to get snaps from him, not take a big risk week 1, see if it works out. If not, move on. And finally, a rookie, Xavier Watts. I know rookies, are tough to call them bankable, but I do think that Xavier Watts is going to, as of right now, Atlanta has told us he's the starting free safety. I do think that's not smoke. That is real. For a full-time player, if you can get him at the DB3 cost, I think it's a good investment. His highest tackle mark at Notre Dame, even if you watch his highlight tape, was super impressive. His highest tackle mark was only 82 tackles. So not somebody who you're going to be targeting in big, heavy tackle heavy scoring as a DB2 or DB3, but I do think in blended scoring or big play scoring, he does have that DB3, DB2 upside. So Xavier Watts, the free safety there in Atlanta, rookie, big playmaker. Just don't expect a bunch of tackles. Now moving down to upside stashes, guys who are not guaranteed anything to start the year, but I think as the season goes on, 1 or 2 games in, that these guys that I can be talking about here in IDP waiver wire, which I will run in the season too. So stick with that. First guy I want to mention, took him out of my top 24, was super bullish on him, and that's Demani Richardson. And that's just because we frankly don't know the snap percentages for week 1. Nick Scott is supposedly the starter at free safety. I think that's smoke and mirrors all day. It's either going to be Richardson or Lathan Ransom there with Trayvon Merriweather. Like I said, if I'm coaching on a Madden team, Trayvon Merriweather's a backup, and I'm starting Demani Richardson and Lathan Ransom. I get it. They want to put the vet out there. They signed him to a nice contract, Merriweather, so they want to see what they have in him. And maybe he's not affected at all, but I definitely am not buying in on Nick Scott. I think this is just smoke. Whoever gets the second safety job here, Richardson or Ransom, I'm more impressed with. I hope it's Richardson. Was crazy good last year. 0% snaps weeks 1 through 7, then started 5 games after that. And then those 5 starts, Demani Richardson had 48 tackles, which is just under 10 a game. So extremely rich production there as far as tackles from Richardson. And that was out of the free safety position. Lathan Ransom, we can't say what he's done in the NFL. He's a rookie, but was a big-time baller at Ohio State. Also make it a look early too here. So, I was more high on Richardson than I was on Ransom. Kind of still am, as far as IDP upside. But still, whichever one gets in the game first, I think has big upside for the Carolina Panthers and for your defensive back grouping as well. Next upside stash is Nick Emmanwori from Seattle, who I mentioned before. Second round pick, big expectations. I think he's an absolute future stud. Just don't see it happening early. It could happen this year, but I just don't see it happening early. They still have Kobe Bryant, still have Julian Love. Devin Witherspoon there is a solid, slot player. So Nick Emmanwori, I think he's going to get eased in, but wouldn't be surprised if we're, looking at his last 10 games and saying he's a defensive back 1 or 2 next year. So Emmanwori, not a guy who you want to start out as starting in week 1, but definitely a name to keep an eye on. And finally, someone who could have made this list, but we just aren't guaranteed to know their snap percentage yet, is Jaden Hicks. Jaden Hicks from the Chiefs should be starting at strong safety. Again, not guaranteed, but should be the starter there. He had a nice season in limited sample size last year. We did hear the expectation early in the preseason that he is supposed to take over Justin Reed's role. But right now, looks like Brian Cook is the free safety. Chamari Connor maybe the strong safety. We're not sure, but the money's on Jaden Hicks in the long run to be a starter at one of the safety positions. We do think it's going to be the strong safety, and I like it. He's a starter. We think so. If week 1, week 2, the snaps look good, I think he'll be the starter for the rest of the year. My only hesitation there is limited upside. I mean, how good can Jaden Hicks? How many tackles can he produce? If he does take Justin Reid's spot, Justin Reid in the last 3 seasons with Kansas City, no 100 tackle seasons or more. So all 3 of those last 3 seasons for Justin Reid under 100. How much upside does Jaden Hicks can he actually get? So maybe if he's a full-time player, he does eclipse 100 tackles, but I'm not expecting 120, 130, anything like that. But does have some big play upside to his game too. So those are my honorable mentions. I want to thank you for listening. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. And as always, thanks for rocking with me. Keep an eye out for my week 2 waiver wires once week 1 starts off. So if any questions, let me know. I appreciate you and good luck in your drafts. We will see you next time on the IDP Plus podcast.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.